Well, hi everyone. I'm Beatty and welcome again, my friends, to the Ask Beatty Show. And it's hard to believe that it has been almost 13 years that I have been hosting the Ask Beatty Show. And if you actually translate that and you do the calculations every single week, and it's been a joy for me to do the show. And, even more importantly, I love getting the response from you, the discussions, the debates, the questions. And for those of you who may be actually tuning in for the very first time and you're wondering, so what is she talking about and who is Beatty Conrados? I am a psychotherapist and a sex therapist. Yes, one of those. I am also the author of a groundbreaking book. And I say this every single week. I only wish that I had had this book when I was starting out on my own relationship and dating life. Trust me, everyone, it would have made the path a lot easier. And of course, the book is For Better, For Worse, Forever. Discover the path to lasting love. And how this all happened was is that I did research with 450 people, men and women, in the Providence, Boston, and Connecticut area. And I came up with a formula, with a 10-step formula. And for people who know me, they know that I'm very bottom line. I have no time for psychobabble. I have no time just for a lot of theory. It's really do the things that we're talking about, how we are living our lives. Do they work? And that's really the bottom line. So this formula, this 10-step formula, teaches us all how to accurately assess. Yes, assess. It's not sexy, it's not romantic, but how to accurately assess who's right for us and who's wrong for us before committing to any serious relationship. Now, listen, we can't change our history, but I often talk about lessons to be learned. And then when I look at the divorce statistics in this country, it's very, very clear that the lessons are not really being learned, because you may be surprised to know that the divorce rate for first marriages is 48%. And then I'll say to people all the time, so, okay, what is the divorce statistic for second marriages? Well, the divorce statistic for second marriages happens to be 67%. And then people will say, okay, marriage number one didn't work out. Marriage number two, for whatever reasons, we didn't do our homework. We did not figure out what went wrong. We didn't get ourselves in a good place emotionally and psychologically. But what about third and fourth marriages? Surely we are doing better. Well, my friends, the divorce statistic for third marriages is between 71 and 72%. And I think that those are really startling. They're absolutely startling statistics. And then if we're looking at domestic violence rates, again, there's so much talk. There are therapists and self-help groups and people talking about mental health all the time. And yet every single week when I'm citing these national statistics, it's like, really and truly, what is going on? Because we are not in a good place when it comes to our relationships, and certainly in the world of domestic violence. Again, you may be surprised to know that 3 women are killed every single day by their so-called intimate partner. But I have good news. I have good news with all of this that I really want to share. Over the years, and I've been practicing now, and I can hardly believe it, for over 35 years as a psychotherapist and sex therapist, I've really identified the 3 things that we all need to do. And, I'll say it's only 3 things. It's only 3 things, but they are big things. The 3 things that we all need to do to never make a mistake in love again. So, number 1, each of us needs to be in a good place emotionally and psychologically and psychiatrically, and we need to be able to work through as best as we can what I call the skeletons in the closet and our unfinished business. And no, we cannot change our history, But what I have found in working with thousands of people over the years is that there really is a good way to help people emotionally work through what did and did not happen in their lives so that finally, and again, nothing is perfect, but finally we are able to live mostly in the moment, mostly in the present, without having one foot in the past and one foot in the present. And as I used to tell my daughter Jordana all the time about relationships, and of course she grew up fortunately or unfortunately hearing about relationships and sexuality and mental health, throughout her entire childhood. But the relationship, seriously, the relationship needs to be the icing on the cake, and we really do need to be the cake. We really do need to be solid and tasty, and we need to have our act together. So that's number one. Number two, again, with all the self-help books and talks about relationships, I find that people are still unclear. And this is not a criticism, and it is not a judgment, but it is a fact. People are still really unclear about the actual ingredients that go into a healthy relationship. And we need to know that. We really do need to know that if we are going to protect ourselves and educate ourselves and empower ourselves, and above all, keep ourselves safe. And of course, number three is the formula. And people say assessment, evaluation. It's not sexy. It's not fun. I'm attracted to him. She's sexy. He's got money. Well, those are all very nice things. But the fact is that those are the things that are not, those are not the things that are going to help you. I mean, those are factors, and it's nice that he's sexy and has money and she's cute. But there are many, many other things that need to go into a healthy relationship. So if you want love and if you want to keep yourself safe, we need to be smart for ourselves. And, one of the phrases that I go on and on and on about all the time is that really trying to make sure that we are living our lives in ways that are really in our best interest. And a lot of people, especially people who grew up in abusive and dysfunctional families, they haven't quite learned what those ways are. And what I see oftentimes when people are coming in to work with me in therapy is that there is a repeat dynamic that goes on that is, in quotes, comfortable. The person who is used to abuse, the person who is not used to love and compassion, and ends up in a situation that is actually similar to what didn't and did happen when they were growing up. And it's really confusing. So again, it is about really taking care of ourselves and really taking care of our current business, and also the history that in many, many ways hinders us from being able to really live a good and joyful life. Now, every week, and this is before I introduce my absolutely amazing guest, I have a check-in. I know that every single year people will talk about checking in and having their blood work done and having an annual physical, and these are things that are all really important. But in other areas of our life, we don't check in on ourselves sufficiently. So my Ask Beatty, how are you doing weekly segment actually encourages, I was going to say forces, but I can't force anybody to do anything. All I can do is encourage you to be honest with yourself. So if you're looking at your mental health as an example, how are you doing? Is your depression really getting in the way of your life and your relationships, or your anxiety, or some of those old historical dynamics that went on when you were growing up, the abuse, the sexual abuse, addictions of various different kinds? I think it's so important that at least we are honest with ourselves. And if we are finding that we are on a never-ending roller coaster ride, the real question, we can talk about dreaming and hoping and wishing, but the real question then becomes, what are we going to do about it? Are we going to do something about it, or are we going to complain? And are we going to continue to repeat dysfunctional patterns of behavior and relationships that will continually wound us in a variety of ways. And for those of you who are lucky, you have family and friends, and you can talk to your family and friends, and hopefully they will be there and they will be supportive and they will be compassionate and they will love you. But if you don't, and if nothing else, what I've been trying to do over all these years is to convince and encourage people to reach out and ask for good professional help. And I say good because for people who've been listening to the show, you know that all professional help, certainly in my area and in other areas as well, is not good. So we really have to be careful, and we need to do our research in this area as well. And then about our relationships. It was really interesting. I've been working with a couple who've been married for a very, very long time, and they've had significant marital issues, affairs. And yesterday, this couple, they were talking about what did and didn't happen on their wedding night. And they've been married for close to 45 years. And the disappointments that both of them felt that they carried on throughout their marriage and never talked about it until last night. So it's this unfinished business. Now, we can't change what happened or didn't happen on their wedding night, but we certainly can find ways for people to try to process all of this and say, well, I didn't know, and I'm sorry, and I wish it had been different. And this is where, when we're looking at our relationships, it's so important to keep ourselves in check. And if there are issues, and there are going to be issues in all of our relationships, whether we're talking about love relationships, whether we're talking about business relationships, the importance, and this is another sort of mantra that I go on and on and on about, the importance of acknowledging, addressing, and resolving as best as we can, even though we can't change history, the issues that continue to get in the way of our life and our relationships. So this is what I mean about being mindful. So we have to be mindful about our mental health, our relationships, professional lives. I hear many people say, I've been in a profession and I've hated it. I haven't been true to myself. So again, asking ourselves on a regular basis, at least once a week here on the Ask Beatty show, is this working for me? This, my mental health, my relationships, my financial situation. Am I on track? Am I on track with substance abuse issues that I may have had? We fool ourselves all the time in a variety of ways. And then we wonder why things aren't really working as well as we would like. And our physical health. And it's important that we're mindful of the exercise and the eating well and making sure that we get enough sleep. I mean, I hear people telling me all the time, they're up in the middle of the night. They're gaming, they're emailing, they're looking at all kinds of things, and then they wonder why they are walking around feeling so haggard and tired and just not all that motivated. So again, making sure, asking ourselves these questions, making sure that we are on track. And if we are not, again, figuring out what we need to do to be good to ourselves, to be living our life in ways that are really in our best interest. Yes, self-care. It's really, really important. And I think that it's often very, very easy, to be difficult, very difficult to be honest with ourselves. And if we can't be honest with ourselves, we really can't be honest with anybody else. And yet, it is our avoidance and denial and our blame and our self-blame and our defensiveness that really keeps us in a downward spiral. And it takes a lot of courage to wake up and say, no, this is not working. This, in all kinds of ways, is not working. And to make the decision and to be motivated and to stay on this constructive path and to ask for help, whether it is from friends or family or from professionals. And if we do these things, it's really amazing that we can live happy and joyful lives. And make no word about this, that everybody, people will say to me, well, she's so rich and she's so beautiful and they have houses all over the world, so how could they possibly be unhappy? Well, I have treated some of the wealthiest people in America, and I can tell you that with the houses and the cars and the planes and everything else, unless these various different things are in a good place, the houses and the cars and the money and the stock accounts, they don't do the trick. So hopefully your weekly check-in has been positive. And if not, I'm hoping and I have confidence in you that you are going to be willing to pivot. Well, I am so excited. And my producers at the Progressive Radio Network, we are now videoing the show. So, like, I wish all of you would be able to see us and my beautiful guest, beautiful inside and out. I mean, the beauty, the external beauty we know, but the internal beauty with my guest, Sonia Sartre, is something that is very special. So, first of all, welcome, Sonia. And I want people to know, I want people to know a little bit about you. Well, Sonia Sartre, she is a former guiding light star, soap opera star. She played Lucy Cooper from 1993 to 1997 in this very, this was a big deal, guiding light soap opera. She went then on to play Barbara. Barbara, what was your
I always call her Psycho Nurse Barbara because she was a little crazy.
Psycho Nurse Barbara in One Life to Live. But then there was a pivot, and Sonia wrote an amazing book, which we're going to be talking about. What if it were easy? Using movement and mindset to create success in life, love, and business. Sonia is also a wonderful, truly wonderful motivational speaker and certified life coach, and very important wife, mother, and my friend. And I'm so happy that you are on the show today, Sonia.
Thank you. I'm so happy to be on this show with you. And what a remarkable beginning. Those statistics are so startling. And I totally couldn't agree with your way to work around it, or to work through it, or to not have that be a problem. So huge kudos to you for your book and for everything you're trying to bring to change relationships.
Well, as are you.
Oh wow, sorry. We just got my dog back.
Oh, okay. Bring your dog.
She agrees too. She's celebrating yours. Your book as well.
Right. Well, we should definitely bring her on the show as well. I suspect that she would have some very interesting things to say about you and your life. The one thing, even when we have walked and talked in Riverside Park here on the Upper West Side in very beautiful today, New York City, I don't think I ever really asked you why you decided to leave the television world. You were a star. You were a star. You were making it. You were paid. You had a regular gig. What was it that motivated?
What were you thinking?
What were you thinking? What were you thinking? Yes.
So I think, I had a teacher once who said, you have this interesting way of making your goal harder to get to. Because I think at one point I'd said, well, if I just become famous, then I can help people. And she was like, why don't you just help people? And I think at that moment, I realized that at the core of really who I was and what I really wanted to do was to help make a difference in people's lives. And I'm so just wildly passionate about helping other people in many ways do what I did, which was to follow a dream and to go make it happen. And how can I help people to do that? And so sorry, I'm having a lot of activity here today, but that was a big part of it, that in my heart, in my core, that was actually what I really wanted to do. And so I think it was a big transition. It was really challenging to like walk away. That had been my identity, but that was something that I really wanted.
So show business wasn't quite doing it for you. Is that really what you're saying? Despite the fame, despite the notoriety, there was something within you that said, I don't think this is quite it.
Yeah. And it's so funny because I just had this conversation with somebody the other day. And and I think you and I have shared this, right? There's something really fun and compelling about lights, camera, action, being on
Yes.
set, being in that mix, right? And I
Yeah.
still love that. And I do miss probably that aspect of it. Um, but when I actually look at the work side by side, do I really want to say other people's lines in, whatever, some commercial for some drug, or it's like even the soap opera copy, or even sometimes a movie or something like that, it it doesn't feel as fulfilling as actually pulling out and helping people to see who they really are, to get in alignment, a little bit of what you were talking about, right? To work through their stuff, find their alignment, find what really lights them up, and then get the courage to take that action and make it happen. Like, that is just so fulfilling to me, and more than perhaps saying other people's lines. So there's pieces of it I miss. There's pieces of it that I still love, but that's I think in terms of the hardcore work and the difference that I feel like I'm making, it's still more fulfilling when I do coaching.
No, definitely. So how did you then? You said, okay, I'm done with Hollywood for the most part. What did you then do to get credentials, to start to write, to think about your programs, to actually begin to put all of this wanting to help people into some action in very concrete ways? How did you do this? How did it begin?
Well, it was a gradual process. It was not an overnight deal. I definitely took steps to it, and I actually did it in reverse order because I was still acting. I wasn't on the show at that point, but I was still pursuing acting, and I was still getting jobs. And then I was pregnant, and so there are a lot fewer jobs for pregnant people.
Right, right.
So it was a little bit of a hiatus. I was still actually doing some modeling, and I did do a commercial pregnant, but by and large, there wasn't much work. And so during that time, I thought, I've kind of become that person because I had studied mindset so much to help myself in the whole auditioning slash rejection process, that I was the person that people would come ask for help. And so I thought, well, maybe I should actually learn how to really do this so I could really help people. And so while I was pregnant and during the first year of my daughter's life, I got certified as a coach. And then when she was born, I thought, well, okay, I'm going back to all of it. I'm going to go back. I'm going to be a coach. I'm going to be an actor. I'm going to be a speaker. I'm going to do it everything. And I realized, wow, I'm not doing anything well at all. So at that point, I was starting to face the reality of, if this is something I really want, I'm going to have to put more time, more intention, a little more effort into it. And there were only so many hours in a day. And I was actually faced with a choice. There was one day where the universe is like, okay, you say you want to choose, here you go. And I had been requested as a series regular for a show. So it was a small pool. I hadn't gotten it, but it was a very small pool of actors for that. And it was a casting director I knew well who was like, you have a really good shot at this. And there was that, or a speaking engagement. And I
Wow.
had to choose. There was one or the other. That was it. And that was the day when I chose the speaking engagement.
And what
So
was the speaking engagement about? I
it
mean, here
wasn't
you
even
are.
that, it wasn't a huge thing at the time. I was actually, because I didn't really even know what I was speaking about when I first started. I didn't even know you could be a speaker. I was doing some Toastmasters and there was a professional speaker in there. I was like, seriously, that's a business?
Right, right.
And so then it was this constant process of, well, what do I speak about? I had this passion. I had been just starting coaching, but I also had all of this experience as an actor. And so it seemed from a marketing standpoint that the wiser choice was to use acting skills for to help people learn to speak and for presence and speaking training. So that was actually the very first thing that I spoke on. So it was a job doing that
And you
for a group
haven't
of
looked
people.
back. And you
I
haven't looked
haven't.
back since. And I know
I
you say that you dabble occasionally in acting. Are you ever tempted to go back into the world of Hollywood and the lights and the cameras? Is there ever a moment where you think, gee, what am I doing? Maybe I should really go back.
I definitely had those moments in my dabbling. I did a movie last year, and that was really fun. I actually have something coming out called Cowboy Wars on Netflix. It's a really small part, but it's a mini series. And when I have dabbled, it's been really fun, and I've thought, oh, maybe I should go back. But then I kind of get the sinking feeling. And I think that this is a great thing for people when they're even choosing, what gives you that feeling of sort of lightness, or what gives you that like feeling in your gut, like, ugh, that feels like not quite right. And I always get that sort of sinking feeling of, could I really walk away from this other world that brings me so much joy to go back and just like pound the pavement, be rejected, and then, get job. Even if I got jobs, like the best case scenario of doing something that doesn't feel like perhaps I'm making as much of a difference as it feels now.
I mean, I
So
totally can relate to what you're saying because I know my entree into the whole national TV and radio world, it was something that I was just absolutely determined to do. But what I found over the years when I was doing even half hour, let's say people were interviewing me for a half hour on some show. At the end, it's so interesting you say this, it was great, it was fun, and but there was kind of a letdown that had I only had that, and had
yeah,
I not had my patience and my practice and my purpose, where I also, look, it's been so long helping people, that too wouldn't have been enough. It wouldn't have been
it's not.
enough.
And I think you nailed it with the word purpose. And I think that is what I really understood, is that there felt like there was a much deeper purpose in what I was doing than it felt with the acting. The acting was fun. I loved it. And every once in a blue moon, I would get hit with it. And I have shared this. My character Lucy had been in a rape storyline on the soap opera, so it was a it was a real thing, and I took it very, very seriously. I did a lot of publicity with a rape hotline and whatnot, and I got a letter from a young girl who was a fan, and she said, when Lucy got raped, I was raped, and when Lucy got helped, I got help.
Wow.
And that was a day when I thought, wow, you know, this does make a difference. It can make a difference. And that was probably the most fulfilling day of my entire soap career, and it's like, oh, we make fun of soaps and they're silly and they're crazy and they're exaggerated, but sometimes they actually do cover really important stories, and people are watching, and it mattered for that young girl. And that felt really, really great. And I think even when you get into entertainment, there's the hope, right? That you're going to do something that's so amazing that it's going to change the world. And, you'll have days and moments like that, but they're pretty few and far between.
Exactly, exactly. So tell me, the kind of coaching, you moved into coaching, you became a certified coach. What exactly are you doing? And I'm so curious, who are the people that are contacting you for coaching? What are their issues? And let the audience know, what kind of a path do you take them on so that they can too begin to really realize their dreams and live their lives in ways that are truly in their best interest?
Yeah. I think there has been a shift. I think initially people came to me for everything. Initially, I actually coached a lot of actors. So I was coaching actors on all the things on dealing with rejection was a big part of it,
Nice.
something I knew very well. And now I would say that the majority of the coaching that I do is a little more purpose centric. I don't know that I go so far as to call myself a purpose coach, but I think that is a huge part of what I end up coaching on is where are people out of alignment with what really lights them up and how that impacts every area of their life, right? From relationships to their health to their general fulfillment. And so how can we help them get on track? And a lot of times for me, that is women who are anywhere from 35 on the young side on up to older who have either had kids and maybe they're coming back and want to do something different, or they've been in the corporate world and they're burned out and they want to do something different. Or for whatever other reason, they're in some kind of a transition and they're really looking, they want something more meaningful in their life. And so that's typically who I work with. Interestingly, this past year, I've actually done some work with college students, which is a little bit of a shift for
Uh,
me. I did a program at a local college, St. Thomas of Aquinas College, and had a cohort of students that had led to a few other students on the side. And that's been really fun, actually. I really enjoyed it's different, right? They don't necessarily have
yes.
the baggage or the many years of having repeated similar things that we're getting them into a place that you have to unwind. Um, and they're really very hungry for trying to learn new tools to really create a future that they feel good about and that they're proud of and that they're excited about. And there's a lot of stress in those young students. I think there always is, but it's a tough time out there right now. There's just so many variables, and having to navigate that is challenging. So it's helping them through that and staying on purpose. So I'd say those are the two areas that I've mostly been targeting right now, and I do really love that.
So with the students, and I love working. In fact, last year I was doing some consulting at East Hampton High School with high school students,
High school, yeah,
right.
that's great.
And talk about kids that are not sure. Of course, these were post-pandemic years, and um, the socialization issues where, I found that it was so difficult at times for the kids to even articulate what they were feeling, and not just to the teachers or to me, but but to each other. And I find it really interesting that the college age students would reach out. And is it the what should we do with our careers kind of thing, or what kind of a career should I be in, or what were the more specific issues that these kids were wanting help with?
So it was I think it warmed up. They first and it's funny because I actually was really impressed by how articulate these kids were, because
Uh-huh.
I have dealt a little bit with high school, and I think it's different. It really
Yes,
is different. I think in
yes.
high school they're really still finding their way, and it's really challenging for them to articulate. But these college kids, the college students I've worked with, have been very impressive all across the board. They've really they have a they have a strong work ethic. They have a strong desire and understanding of what it could mean to follow a purpose. Like that language and is in their vocabulary. They want to do that. Most of the ones that I had already chosen some form of a major that they felt pretty good about. Um, a couple of them were playing it safe, and so it really was like, well, what would be outside of your comfort zone in any area of your life? Like, what
Right,
could you do to sort of expand your horizons?
right.
And like one student was a basketball player, and she was feeling a little stuck, and she was really good, and but she was terrified at the idea of transferring or going somewhere else. And she ended up doing it. She ended up like putting herself out there just to see what was out there, and she ended up getting pulled into um to a higher, to a level one. And so she's in a better school, she's in a better basketball program, she's like really set up for major success, and it was such a huge victory for her. And I think it will be a transformational victory for her in her life, because she realized how much more potential she had than she was giving herself credit.
Did you find with the students, and then I want to tell the audience about your motifs. There's 7 steps that I heard you speak about just a couple of weeks ago, helping people go from A to B to C to D. Now, with the college students, did they say that they had difficulty speaking with their own parents about all of this, and that somehow their comfort level with you was better? I mean, did the parents participate in any of this, or these were just kids that reached out to you?
It was a program that was offered. They volunteered. None of them had ever heard of coaching, had absolutely no idea what they were getting into. And then the addition of Size, actually, it's called, and it's the combination of movement and mindset. And so, no, they were blindly like showing up to see what they were in for. And all of them at the end were saying how grateful they were to have somebody to talk to. Because no, I don't. Some of them had good relationships with their families and could talk about some things. Others had less of that sort of safety net at home. And they all were pleasantly surprised. In fact, they were telling their friends about the program, and their friends were jealous that they hadn't signed up. They're like, wow, I had no idea how great it would be to have somebody. Because while coaching has a therapeutic angle, right? We don't ignore a person's past, because that would be insane, right? That's who we are, that's where we come from. And so there definitely, we'll go into tough areas if that exists. I think therapy is more geared towards that. And
Yes.
so the coaching has a little more opportunity for them to look at all areas of their life. So some was relationships with their roommates and how to deal with that. Some was around partying and not wanting to partying and how to deal with that. A lot was around taking chances, what kind of jobs or internships, where should they apply, what next level of schooling, should they go that direction or this direction. So there was a lot of that kind of talk. So I would say it was personal, a little bit of family, and a lot of like choices about how they could best position themselves for success.
Yeah,
And
and
I,
they learned,
yeah.
and they learned, and this is something that you try to teach people. I try to teach people that we don't need to navigate life's ups and downs and uncertainties on our own. And having
Uh-huh.
somebody like you who's got so much energy and so much positivity, I mean, what a gift! Really a gift that these kids were able to receive from working with you. You talk a lot about, the mindset reset, and I want people to hear exactly what the mindset reset is and what the process is, in going from, A to B to C to D.
Yeah. So something that I created, that the book is really about, is this concept of combining coaching and movement. And the movement has varied and has evolved over the years. It started out as being very much of an aerobics kind of a program where I would match the mindset to the movement. And it was a distinct 7-step process that you would go through around a specific goal. Since then, not everybody loves aerobics. And so it has evolved to, sometimes I do it on spin, sometimes I'll do it with people on like an elliptical, and sometimes I'll walk. And I actually have quite a few clients where we will walk and coach or talk.
Yeah, yeah.
And so it's still getting your body activated and your mind activated at the same time. We'll go through so the coaching questions or process of this mindset reset is really around a goal. If you don't know what your goal is, or you have some area that you think you want it to be around, you can start with one of my favorites of what if it were easy? What
Yeah.
would you do? And that
Yes.
really was at the core. That's the title of the book. And that's really meant to open the mind to possibility. It's not taking this Pollyanna approach of it's easy, like it's just pretend.
Right.
Not
Yeah.
about pretending. We don't want to pretend anything, but it's just imagine for a moment if it were easy, what would you do? And sometimes the answers are quite extraordinary and very telling for what your heart, what your soul, what you really, really want. And when that comes out, then you can kind of work and play around and figure out, well, how might we make that happen? Which would lead you to the next question of, well, what would it look like? So it's really stepping into the future of, what would it look like? How would it feel? Let's get connected to the success of that, because that feels inspiring. It also gives us a bit of a vision to work towards. Then we start to look back and be like, well, what do you have? What do you have right now that you could use to work towards something? And that's a really important question, because
Yeah.
everybody
Yeah.
skips that one. Everybody goes right to all the things they don't have.
Right. Right. Right.
And so, what do you have? What do you need? And then a little bit of what's stopping you, just to, name the pink elephant in the room, not to dwell on it, but to look at it. We do a little fun burning thing where we sort of dump that and replace it with a more positive belief. And then what actions would you take? Because it's all fine and good to talk and think and visualize, but you do at the end of the day have to take some action. So taking action and visualizing that action, so you see yourself taking it. So it's almost like athletes do, right? It's a warm up. It's a
Yes.
practice it in your mind and then go do it.
Right. Now, for example, okay, I'm sure you have women in their 50s and 60s and maybe older. So when an example, like a case study here, somebody contacts you who's 50 or 60 or 70, let's say they're divorced or widowed, where would you begin? What is it that they would be looking for? Because Sonia, in my world, everybody is looking to feel better in terms of their mental health. And if they're feeling better in terms of mental health, they are all looking for love and healthy relationships. If there was one commonality, whether it's 20 or 30 or the high school kids or 70, it's we want to feel good physically and emotionally and psychologically, and we're looking for love. So what would you do? A woman, let's say, is a widow, and she contacts you, and I suppose she's maybe needing help with the grieving process, but her maybe her goal is to find someone who she can love, and to find someone who will love her, and that there will be a next chapter. So where would you
Sure.
be?
So if it was only about love, I might send them to you. I
Right.
have absolutely coached people through relationships, but interestingly, I would say that's not usually the reason people reach out to me.
Oh,
Most people are reaching out. That same woman would be like,
yes.
I lost my husband. There might be some grieving. There might be still like I'm trying to figure out how to get up in the morning and make something happen. But for me, most of the people that come to me would be like, I want to figure out what I'm going to do with the
Oh,
rest of my
okay.
life. Like I'm so used to being in this current that relationship. This is what I did. Some people had jobs, maybe they didn't. Maybe they were involved in volunteer work, or as a relationship they did things together. And now all of a sudden there's this empty space of what do I do that feels like it fills me up?
What's my
Um,
purpose? What's my
what's
purpose now?
We go back to purpose, like what am I
Yes.
here to do? And I've got hopefully another 20, 30, 40 years, and I
Right.
don't want to sit around doing nothing. So most of the time, people who come to me, I think, would be looking for that. And so then it starts to like, then we start digging down into, you know, what are their interests? What do they love? Where are they, what's something they did in their past that they feel really proud of, and start distilling like their values of what's under there. Because often by the time, you know, that time, they've forgotten what they actually like to do. You know, I don't know what
Right,
makes me happy anymore. So it's really like this, um, you know, it feels like it's a question in a foreign language to them, you know, like, I don't know, how do I so we start the process of of really unwinding and going deeper into that and figuring it out. And that's the fun part for me, because it's like this little puzzle, and when they start to find it again, oh, it's like light bulbs going off all over the place. Like, oh, I remember this. I used to do this. And they'll like talk forever about how great it used to be when they did this when they were 30 or 20, you know? And it's like that matters. And how might we distill some of what was important, that mattered, that brought you life and vitality into the now. And maybe it's not that exact thing, but maybe there's a piece of it that is.
right. You know, I read an article, it was in the New York Times a couple of weeks ago, in a woman, her name is Bronnie Ware, and she wrote a book called The Top Five Regrets of the Dying, and she's a former palliative care caseworker. And she spent 8 years administering aid for people who were battling serious, you know, illnesses, and many, you know, ended up dying. And what she did, she paid attention to the guilt and remorse that people expressed on their
Mm.
deathbeds, and thought that there was a big lesson. You know, as I talk about lessons to be learned, what could we learn? And these are some of the things. And as you're talking, you know, I'm going back to this article. So there were five things, Sonia. She said, I wish I'd had the courage to live a true life to myself, not the life that others expected of me. And I don't know whether
Oh,
that
it gives me
resonates.
chills when I hear that, because I'm like,
Yes,
that's what I want to help people do.
exactly. And I wonder with your, you know, clientele, whether or not many or at least some actually had spent their lives up to the time that they were working with you, kind of living their lives. They weren't living their true essence. They were trying to please others. They had obligations. There were a lot of shoulds in
Yeah,
how they were living, and they were looking to find, what is it that I really want? What's important to me? What is my purpose?
100%. That's exactly right. Yes.
Yeah. And
I
just a
want to
couple of
solve
other,
that problem for them, because it is. And the courage, because it takes a
yes.
lot to do
Yeah.
that. And so I
Yeah.
think a lot of the work that I do too is helping people take steps out of their comfort zone. And that
Right.
can be in any area of their life. It can be in relationship, it can be in health, it can be in just like, just go do something that's like you would normally do. And
Right.
once they start like pushing that, you know, pushing that envelope a little bit, then they start to feel like, oh, I can do this. Oh, that was fun, you know, and it's not as daunting.
Yeah.
And that also opens up like an energy force for them.
Right. And I think even with that, even more importantly, that they have somebody, you, who is giving them permission to
Yeah.
be able to go after the things in their lives that are important to them. You know,
Yes.
that's so critical. You know, and a couple of the other things that this Bronnie Ware found, she said people had said, I wish I hadn't worked so hard. I wish I'd had the
Mm.
courage to express my feelings. I wish I'd
Mhm.
stayed in touch with my friends. I wish that I had let myself be happier.
Mm.
Yes.
Wow. That's great. That's really, it's so, so true. Yeah.
And I think
Yes.
that's in part, I mean, that sounds like it's a huge part of what you do.
Yes.
It's out
Yes.
at this point in their life so that they can finally be true to themselves and live their lives in ways that are truly in their best interest.
100%. And I always, always, always believe it is never too late. It's never too late. So you could be 70 and come and do this work, and you still can, like, you can live out those last years in a really happy, fulfilling, amazing way. And we're all living longer these days, hopefully, and thriving, right? And so how do we do that and really just come from a place of light instead of a should?
No, exactly. And this is why, even though I think it's frustrating for a lot of my listeners to hear my weekly, checkup, I want people to dig in and
Mhm.
really be honest with themselves so that they're not going to be 95 and dying and saying, oh my God, I wish I'd had a different
Man.
relationship. I wish I'd lived my life differently. I wish I regret. And this is the whole point about taking the time and taking the space to ask ourselves exactly the questions that your clients ask you and that they're trying to
Yeah.
figure out. And in a way, they're sort of the same or similar questions that the people who I treat are asking themselves and trying to figure out in therapy with me. How do I have a happier life? How do I live a more joyful life? I'm not
Yeah.
happy. I'm not sure why, but I want to find out.
Absolutely. And to your point that you mentioned earlier, when they start to discover that and figure it out and live it, then they can find that partner that's actually going to complement that. And they're not just looking for somebody to fill the void or to, or to do a should, when really there's a want underneath all of that.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I think it goes very hand in hand with relationships, and it's an important piece to it, a key to it.
No, for sure. And in my world, I don't know whether it's the same thing in your world. Nobody that I treat wakes up one day and says, "Oh well, I think I need to check in with somebody about my depression or my relationship, or my early child sexual abuse." For me, there is always a major crisis before people
Right.
ever contact me. Nobody ever calls to improve their communication or problem solving skills. That certainly with couples, that never happens. Do you find too that there is usually an event, a significant event, let's call it maybe an event or a crisis that
Hmm.
prompts people to finally, begin to ask themselves what's important to me. And if I'm not sure, I'm going to reach out to Sonia Satra and I'm going to find out and get myself on a good path. Is it the same
Sure.
thing?
I think it's similar. It might not be as dramatic by virtue of the fact that of the kinds of work that you do, and even therapy versus coaching. I think therapy, usually it is a crisis, right? With
Always.
coaching, it's a little bit more proactive. Or sometimes I'll get people who've done a lot of therapy and they just want to try something else. But I think we're motivated by pleasure or pain, and most people are more motivated by pain and
Hey,
avoiding pain. So when the pain gets great enough, we'll take action, hence the crisis, to actually get us to do something. I would say I'm like maybe one step behind like that, because there are some people who come to me, they're not in total crisis. They're feeling frustrated, I they're very stuck. That's what I get. People who
yes.
are just spinning their wheels, they're stuck. They know they have to do something differently. They don't know what to do. They're in a transition, or they're seeing that transition down the pipeline,
Right.
and they're just, they feel very lost and very alone, and they've been spinning in their heads for a long time. So
Mm.
I think that's more of what I get, is this just stuck. There's no option, there's no possibility, I don't know what to do. I've tried everything,
Right.
there's always one more, right? But they're not in the crisis that I think that sometimes you deal with,
Right. Well,
like
listen, how
hospitalized crisis, right? Like, I'm not usually getting hospitalized people.
right. And even though I am not usually getting people who may need hospitalization, everybody, when I think about who calls, is in a crisis. So it, as you say, there's, you know, a difference between the kind of coaching that you're doing where people are really looking to expand their horizons and the people who contact me who are in acute states of crisis. So Sonia, I can't believe this. It's 3:55 here in gorgeous, hot, wonderful New York City. How can people reach you and find you?
Yes, well, my website, soniasatra.com. I'm also on all of the social media handles, Instagram, Facebook, LinkedIn, um,
Great.
Twitter, AKX or whatever the heck it is. So I'm on all of those handles and yeah, would love, love, love to talk to anyone seeking purpose.
And as I had mentioned to you, Sonia, there is an archives here. So people who may not have been fortunate enough to see and listen to us live, they'll be able to listen to the show in the archives. And again, the book is What If It Were Easy? Using Movement and Mindset to Create Success in Life, Love, and Business. And I want to thank you so much. I really don't
Thank
know where the
you.
time went. Oh my God. I mean, it just went.
I could talk to you forever.
Well, we're going to continue our talking and walking after the show. So listen again, thanks so much. And
Thank
everybody,
you.
I absolutely endorse and recommend Sonia Satra. And people know that I have real issues with a lot of what goes on in the world of coaching and American mental health. But again, this has been an absolute delight. So everybody who's been listening and tuning in today and all these years, I want to thank you so much for your continued support. And I leave everybody with 2 weekly lessons, not only their check-ins, but their lessons. And the first is, and this was a great conversation today, reminding people to really live their lives in ways that are in their best interest. We need to be good to ourselves in all kinds of ways, emotionally, in our relationships, and physically, and emotionally, and psychiatrically. And secondly, with all the craziness that is going on in the world, all around the world, we all really and truly need to do a much better job in learning to understand and accept each other and somehow find a way to empathize with people who we may not know and we may not understand their points of views, and the advantage of having conversations and having real in-depth kinds of conversations can take us all to a new level of understanding, and not only understanding, but compassion and love. And I think that that's really what it's all about, because in the final analysis, what is really important? It's about love, it's about meaningful connections, and it's about finding our purpose. So again, everybody, I want to thank you so much for tuning in as you do every single week. And I want you to have a wonderful rest of the day and a good week. And we will talk next Monday and every Monday from 3 to 4 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. And take care of yourself and take care of others. Bye-bye, everybody.